I am so excited to be talking about community today and community in communities, okay? Communities are generally described as places of people that, share some things in common. Communities can be a particular area where a particular people reside. Communities can be a certain group, a certain family, or a group of families, or it could be a specific neighborhood in town. That can be a community of artists, a community of Christians, a community of musicians, or even a community of gangsters. Take your pick, and I hope you make the right choice there. And then there are times we look at communities according to the race of the people. Black community, white community, the Hispanic community, the Asian community, or even we may look at them by their economics. There's the rich community, the poor community, strong community, weak community, business community, or farm community. And, communities are usually identified by the people or the place or the condition and function of the people or place. We refer to some as sometimes rundown communities, or the rich communities, rural or urban communities. But community is much more than the people or the places. It is the character of the people. It is the sense of responsibility for one another, and it is the sense of accountability to one another. Community is not just where we live, but it's our values and the standard by which we live. It's not just who lives or works there, but it's how we live and how we work there. Community is who we are as human beings. It's how we communicate with one another. It's how we relate to one another. It's how we love one another. It's how we support one another. It's how we defend one another. But probably more than anything, community is how we treat one another. We are becoming communities without community. The place is there. The people are there. But something is missing. And I believe that it is the community in communities. This is my take. So don't hate. No hating allowed. Pull up a chair and let's talk about it. Well, good Thursday morning, Facebook, YouTube, and anyone else that may happen to be listening and watching. Welcome to another episode of My Take on this Thursday, January the 6th, 2022. And I know that date, January the 6th, bring back some terrible memories, but let's not deal with that right now. Maybe we'll talk about that another time. But as we come together in on this particular platform of My Take, and I'm going to probably be explaining this every Thursday that we come together, because it is imperative, it is essential that we expand our knowledge, that we increase our understanding, and that we use our wisdom to effectively and successfully navigate our way through life. Now, this is not the only way, but this is a good start, I believe. This is a good place to start. We perish for lack of knowledge. So there are some things that we talk about, or some things that we bring to the table simply because we need to know. We need to talk about them. Now, what we think about it, what we do about it, and how we respond to it rests solely with us. That's on you. That's on me. Okay? Communities can change, and communities will change. They're going to change. In fact, they are ever changing. Sometimes they will change geographically. Sometimes they will change demographically. The landscape may change. And with people that are coming and some that are going and relocating and locating, the people will change. What were once so-called white communities are now black communities. And what you may not know is that many black communities have now become white or Hispanic or even Asian or otherwise communities. The economy of the community may change, and often does. The educational and the social standing of the community may change. The politics of the community may change. And sometimes it is politics itself that changes communities. And they do so by sometimes controlling the economics of the community, with redistricting and with policies and procedures that affect that particular community, in one way or another. Okay, I mean, it's no secret. It's no secret that communities are changing. We can see that. We are feeling it. We are experiencing it. And sometimes it is changing for the better. Sometimes it's changing for the worst. And in many cases, there's some much needed changes. We need to change some things. Demographics are changing. The landscape in some cases is changing. And really what I consider the more devastating and disappointing thing is that than anything else, the standards and the values are changing. Our standards and our values are changing. But on the other hand, there are some things that have to change. Some that we've got to change. But then we got to hold on to the things that we don't need to change, that we should never get rid of. There are some things that should never change in our lives. There are some things, my friend, excuse me, there are some things about our communities that we should work diligently to see that they never change. And the one thing that never should change is the community in communities. Unfortunately, what we're seeing in our communities is a snapshot of what is happening in the home and with families. We won't dig too deep there today, but we will be back. Amen. Thankfully, there are still communities that maintain their status and standard and their standing, which truly define community. But they are few and far between. That communal spirit of our communities that we long for did not come from a perfect community, nor did it come from perfect people. But I think it simply came from compassionate, concerned, and caring people who care about their place, people who care about their people, and people who care about what happened there and what happened with them. Are you hearing me? And I know that different ways we talk, different ways we describe things, but community should not be identified only by race of the people. It should not be identified by the color of the people or the social or economic status of the people. Community should be identified by character, by heart, by soul. It should be identified by our values and by the standard by which we live. Community doesn't have to change simply because communities change. Perhaps where we live has changed, but how has how we live changed? How has our purpose for living changed? For the most part, as far as those that still exist are concerned. We know where the black community is. We know where the white community, the Hispanic community, and the Asian communities are. But what we cannot figure out for the life of us is where is community in all of this? Where is that commonality? Where is that unity? Communities are shadows of themselves, ugly shadows of themselves. They are shells of what they once were. And sadly, some are mere long past memories of what brought us thus far and what made us the people that we are today. What has happened to people? What has happened to us? What is happening to us? What has happened to our self-respect, our dignity, and our integrity? What happened to our work ethic? What happened to our values and our moral compass? Where is it? What has happened to being the keepers of our sisters and our brothers rather than the killers of our brothers and sisters? How did we become so selfish and self-centered? When did we turn our eyes and our heart away from the window that showed us the world, the peoples of the world? And now we've turned to focus so intently and intensely on the mirror that shows only ourselves. Oh yes, I long for community. My heart aches for family and for community. And I pray that God restores that sense of community that is needed for the survival of humanity. When I think about it, it's as though our brain and our hearts have been inoculated, filled with Novocaine, leaving us without any feelings about anything or anybody. And I want to suggest to you, my friend, that we take a closer look at our community, a closer look at ourselves to get some perspective, some sense of the direction in which we are heading. Just may be. We may not be going what we think we're going, doing what we think we're doing. We may not be achieving what we would like to achieve. You hear what I'm saying? And it's time for us to take a look, take a close look, take an honest look. How would you evaluate and rank your community? What is your assessment of the place and its people? What is your assessment of our behaviors? Now, while we're looking, my friend, while we are considering, while we are evaluating, while we are analyzing, I think it's important that we also factor in our role in all of this. What role that we play in what our community has become, what we are doing as a community. What role have I played in it? We got to take an honest look. We can't play the blame game and blame everybody else, my friend. But we ourselves, we have to look and see, take a look at this whole picture. Are you hearing what I'm saying? And when you look at it, when you consider it, let me ask you something. When you look around at your community, when you make your assessment, when you analyze the situation, when you evaluate the people, when you look at your community, the place, the people, what is happening, what you're doing, what you're not doing. When you look at it, let me ask you something. How does it affect you? Does the thought do something for you, or does it do something to you? Does it generate joy in your heart, or does it make you sick at your stomach? Does it depress you? Does it disappoint you? Well, I can tell you I've looked, and I'm always looking, because I'm always remembering. I'm remembering that there was a certain attitude, a certain atmosphere, a certain connectivity that was associated with our community. There was a certain spirit that identified the community. I've looked, and I've looked today, and I don't like what I see. I see people that cut throats and stab people in the back. I see deception. I see cheating. I see black on black crime. I see neglect. And I see hatred for one's own people. When I look, I'm not just looking at your community. I'm not just looking at my community. I'm looking at how we as a people are doing overall. I'm not just looking at Gainesville or Atlanta or Athens or Georgia. I'm looking at all America. Listen, and when we look at it, when we consider what we're seeing, of course, there are some good communities. And yes, there are some communities that still enjoy community. There are some good people. Thank you, Lord, for that. But as a whole, the pendulum is swinging, but swinging in the wrong direction. As brown and black people in America that have been here, in many cases, longer than most, and have had more opportunities than most immigrants have had. We continue to lag behind in so many ways. But I will be the first, my friend, I'll be the first to admit that much of it has to do with how and why we came to America. No, we didn't step out here on level ground. Don't let anybody make you believe that. We did not step out in America on level ground like many are doing today, and for a lot of reasons. That's why they are getting ahead of us. That's why they're doing better than us. But still, at the same time, we have to take responsibility for ourselves. Yes, many of our people came here as slaves and were used as forced labor to build America, and we have overcome some unbearable, unthinkable obstacles. But we can't continue to ride that train or use it as an excuse for failure. Yes. Other races, other nationalities, other people of color, including whites, came to America seeking fortune and fame, or maybe they were just looking for a better way of life. And they seem to have found it much sooner and on a greater scale than blacks in America. Listen, my friend, I'm not discounting what we've accomplished. God knows we've accomplished so much and under very undesirable circumstances, to put it, mildly. But in spite of our setbacks, in spite of some of our failures, in spite of the seemingly insurmountable challenges that we have faced throughout our history, we too have had some opportunities, some of which we took advantage of, and some that we allowed to die. We too have had some great successes. I'm not discounting that. When I look at our communities, I'm asking, are we becoming communities without a voice or communities without ears? How many people are speaking up and speaking out? And then when you look at the other side of that, how many are actually listening? How many care to listen? How many care what you're talking about? Are we becoming communities without resources and communities without a heart? Or is it that we don't have it to give or have it to do with? Or is it just that we don't want to give? We don't want to do for our own people. We don't want to do for our own community. What is it? Are we becoming communities without a brain, without knowledge, one which lacks education? Or are we becoming communities where people are not willing to hear, not willing to learn, and who are not willing to consider a different and a better way of life? May I tell you something, my friend? When a community is not satisfied with itself, and I fear that we are becoming communities that are not satisfied with ourselves as a people, and I'm talking about people of color in America, black people in America. It seems that we're becoming dissatisfied with our communities. Listen, a community that is not satisfied with itself, not happy with itself, the people will always be going somewhere else, and the people will always be seeking for someone else, and the people will always be trying to become somebody else. You've seen it, I've seen it. Why not embrace and focus on our community? Why not embrace and focus on community in our communities? Why not invest in and support our communities by ensuring that community will always have a place in our hearts and in our lives? Why not? A tight-knit community is a secure and a powerful community. Are you hearing me? A loving and compassionate community is a community that will survive attrition. Are you hearing me? A united community will stand longer and stronger, my friend. Embrace your community. Love your community. Support your community. A community that is happy with itself will reproduce itself and promote self-preservation. Oh yes. A community that helps itself will always be in a position to help others. Are you hearing me? A community that shares the load, shares responsibility, lightens the load for all. A community that protects itself can protect the nation in which it is a part. Please hear me. A community that invests in itself and invests in the lives of its neighbors will enjoy great success. Oh yes. A stable and contributing community. One, now I'm not talking about one that is a burden, but one that helps other people, one that not only helps itself, not only one that does for itself, listen, but a community that invests in itself and in the lives of its neighbors will enjoy great success. Please hear me, my friend. A stable and a contributing community is one that understands allegiance and loyalty to one another. We understand that those are vital to us. The community that I long for is not just a place, but it's what we had there, what we experienced there, and what we gained from being there. Not a community identified by race or by color, not a community identified by ethnicity, but one identified by love, by compassion, and one identified by values and character. Thankfully, there are some voices, lone voices perhaps, voices in the wilderness maybe, but nonetheless, voices that are speaking loudly with power and conviction. But are we listening? Are we interested? Are we hearing them? If you, my friend, want to reverse the curse, identify the cause and the culprit of the curse, and counter that action with a sensible and effective reaction. May I tell you something, my friend? Someone, and I won't call any names, someone has figured out how to disarm us and silence us. Someone has finally figured out our Achilles heel. And they have done it. They have silenced us. They have disarmed us. They've done it by giving us what we've always wanted. They've done it by allowing us to do what we've always wanted to do with whom we wanted to do it. I'm going to say that again because I'm afraid you will not hear me. I'm even afraid that you didn't want to hear it. Someone has finally figured out how to disarm us and silence us. And they've done it by giving us what we've always wanted and by allowing us to do what we've always wanted to do with whom we've always wanted to do it. Now that's something that's going to require us to think about. Now that's my take. What do you have to say? Sound off? Yeah.